This is Laura DeFranco, holistic physical therapist and owner of Brave Healer Productions. I'm excited to bring you my new holistic healing series where you're going to learn from the experts what it means to live fiercely alive, mind, body, and soul. I invite you now to take a breath, relax, and feel the vibe of the words my guest has to share with you today. Welcome, everybody. This is a really special episode, you guys. I'm interviewing the authors of a new book called Find Your Voice, Save Your Life. This is a project led by lead author Diana Leader of CraveMoreLife.com. And I cannot wait to introduce you to these lovely ladies. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Really happy to have you guys here, and I can't wait to have this discussion. You guys, I have Dr. Erika Putnam. She's a holistic chiropractor. She has over 25 years of chiropractic experience and holds a 500-hour yoga instructor certification. She's a contributing author of The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Techniques and is writing a book for yoga students and teachers about helping not hurting yourself in yoga. Ms. Heidi Blair is a certified professional co-active coach. After 9 years of coaching, Heidi realized her passion sparks when she is helping women connect with their inner wisdom and find their intuitive voice. She can guide you to look deep into your soul's desires for answers to life's big questions. Ms. Neelam Singh is a functional nutrition and certified holistic health coach and yoga teacher. She helps purposeful, driven women lose weight, eliminate chronic health conditions, and take charge of their life naturally. Get ready to experience optimal well-being and vitality through conscious lifestyle practices, stress prevention, and hormone balance. And lastly, Susan Cross helps people see the world in powerful new ways. She's a storyteller, a positivity thought leader, best-selling author, speaker, and award-winning communications expert. Susan is also a passionate advocate of connecting with nature to reduce stress and anxiety and to improve mood. Whoa, you guys, get ready for this conversation. All right, I'm starting with you, Erika. So we put these women's voices together in this book, and really the topic, it meant a lot to all of us. What did it mean for you to find your voice? Tell us about your chapter.
Oh, my chapter might be a little bit different because I think that some of the chapters might be a lot about standing up for voice, and mine was really about making it more subtle. I think as a professional, as a chiropractor, I'm often in a position of authority and maybe speaking words of anatomy that not everyone is familiar with. And so to really make common language has been a bit of a challenge. And so I kind of wrote about teaching a yoga class and keeping things simple without saying very many words. And that is a completely different voice than my physician voice.
Well, I mean, I've known you long enough to know that you weave those voices really well in your writing. You know, talk to me about how challenging that is.
It's really challenging because I tend to have one voice that's very sure of itself, one that's sort of touchy-feely, that's not always sure where to insert that. I have a strong teaching voice. And so I notice in the writing, it really depends. Like I have to decide where the coming from is before I start putting words to paper. And I have close friends, and you included, who could read my work and be like, you just shifted. You need to maybe come back to that place. So it was a big challenge. And it was actually a lot of fun kind of landing in that space of what that writing voice was going to be.
Well, I want to also thank all of you for stepping up to say yes to this project, first of all. and for offering your amazing, vulnerable, authentic stories, you know, for the world to read. Some of you did it for the first time. Some of you are seasoned authors in one way or another. And so for all of the authors, it was a little bit of a different experience, but it takes something to do that, not only to write it, but then to get to the point where you're okay submitting it or okay hitting that publish button, right? Is a whole nother level of, is this good enough to get over? And I know everybody has an amount of that in one way or another. Heidi, talk to us about your experience. Tell us a little bit about your chapter and what does it mean for you to have found your voice?
Well, again, I have, like Erika, sort of a unique chapter in that I was born with one, and it was the losing of it and then reclaiming it that is the crux of my evolution in my chapter. So I was a sassy little child, and I was outspoken from the age of 4. And then I got married and had children and became comfortable and lost it by trying to be someone who I wasn't.
I think that your story is a common story for a lot of women. We, at some place along the road, we lose that. Do you want to share a moment? I know there are probably several moments for lots of us where we can think back. Of course, it's easy to look back in retrospect, right? But can you share a moment where you felt strongly that that was a moment that was happening?
That I was losing it or finding it?
Yeah, losing it.
Losing it, okay. Yeah, so my former husband, the father of my 3 children, asked or commented upon one of my girlfriends and the way that she dressed. And it was tailored and loafers, and she had short hair, and she was, you know, and I was beady and flowery, and, you know, I like flouncy things. And basically I reconstructed my wardrobe to wear the uniform that he wanted. And I conformed completely. And yeah, I just gave up.
Yeah. And I think this is where, like, you know, I'm sitting here listening to that going, oh yeah. Like, and so all of the different ways that we think about in our past, the people who influenced those moments where we made a decision to do whatever we did. Oh my gosh, this is powerful stuff. You all have an amazing way of telling your own unique stories. And I'm so honored to be putting this together with all of you. Again, just say thank you one more time about saying yes and about really getting out there and doing this, being a light for other women. And there are a lot of women who will read our stories and they will never maybe be at the level where they would publish theirs, but I know for sure you all are giving them permission in some way, just by offering yours out loud like you did, to share theirs, even if it's with a BFF, even if it's with, you know, in another kind of safe space. So Miss Neelam, will you talk to me a little bit about your chapter and what did it mean for you to find your voice?
It was kind of interesting. When it came to writing the chapter, it allowed me to look back at my life, and it gave me a picture of where I was a different person at home as a child, and I was quite different when I was outside at school. So I was very vocal. I was protecting the children, my classmates or younger children that I was walking to school with. And I used to live in Belgium at that time. But when I would come home, I was rather quiet and I wanted to be not seen because I had a challenge there. I was growing up around a parent who was very, very laid back and happy-go-lucky, and another who was very, very anxious and worried. So to just not get in his way, and he was trying to homeschool us as well, because we were learning through schooling through French medium, but then there was a part of the other, he thought that we needed to know English as well and to succeed in the world, basically, because that was the only language which was universal. but he was anxious. So just to be low key, so I just didn't want to be seen. So then I noticed that I was trying to be a good girl, starting age 8 till I was about 21. And then when it really mattered at the age of 21, that's when I realized that that was the time when I had just graduated the first degree. And my dad was trying to get me into an arranged marriage. And that's when I realized that I had to speak up. And I didn't even realize until I wrote the chapter that that was where I found my voice again after about 11, 12 years of my life. And so I've seen that when it really mattered, my voice was right there for me. But all my life, even going into when I got married over, going through many relationships, which not a relationship, but I would say situations where you put into interviewing each other, like those arranged marriage kind of situations, until the current husband that I'm married to, I was finding that the voice kept shifting. Sometimes I get very comfortable just because I don't want to be confrontational. I avoid those situations. But when it really mattered, I did have my voice. But so it's kind of interesting to see, because I never paid attention to that until a month ago, looking back at my life. And so it was hard to see, to put together something that was authentic, as well as to respect, what you were going to share there, considering it that I have all these people in my life still. So it was kind of challenging.
There's, a couple things that I resonate with, and I wonder if you all do too. I'm sure that a lot of our viewers are going to, but recovering good girl, anyone? Yeah. So and what that meant for us individually, right? Growing up, what that even meant. But for me, many times it meant I was being quiet no matter what. Like I wasn't wanting to ruffle feathers, not wanting to be seen or heard, or if that was happening, I was worrying about what the consequences would be of that, right? So yeah, so I'm sure that good girl syndrome means something to a lot of different people. And also just touching on something that you all did so well is you figured out how to write about your life in a way that you still felt really good about. Because it's hard to write about moments, especially when they have to deal, you're dealing with other people in your life, especially with this theme of voice. I mean, so finding your voice means you're speaking out loud. Typically somebody else is in the room at that point, right? So those stories a lot of the time have to do with other people around you. So kudos to all of you for doing it well. Susan, talk to me about your story. What did it mean for you to find your voice?
My voice had gone so far off track that it actually took 2 show-stopping moments for me to pay attention to the fact that I wasn't speaking with my authentic voice. I wasn't living an authentic life. On paper, I looked good. I checked everything off the list. I had a good education. I had jobs that I was good at and that I liked. I have a family. I've been married to the same person happily for 35 years, but my voice on the inside had been covered up for so long because I just didn't think it was worth it. I had learned that my own authentic voice wasn't enough. I'd been told that over and over as a child. And even though I could portray confidence and portray success by any paper standards and by most of the social standards that we're all judged on, particularly as women, my voice was missing. And it took 2 showstoppers to get my attention. And that's what my chapter talks about, those moments and how I found my way back.
So I'm going to stick with you for a minute, Susan, and I want you all to think about this because I want you all to answer this. But why is this in particular important anyway, in general? What is it about finding our voice in general, and help the viewer understand the importance of this? They may be listening to your stories and, there's that feeling inside of them and they need someone else to help them understand what the positives are of being on the journey, right? It takes a warrior some days. So Susan, let me stick with you to have you answer that. Why is this important?
What I was reminded about is that I have something to say. I'm here for a reason. I have survived up to this point in my life because I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be sharing my story. I'm supposed to be helping others share their story with the world in whatever form that might take place. And finding my voice means that I do that. Once I rediscovered my voice, I felt much more confident in staking a claim for my right to that space, for my own space in the world, and also for sharing what I had to say. It's the title of my chapter, You Are Enough and You Always Were.
You're making her think of a post that I read, and it was like, you know, if you could tell your younger self 3 words or 5 or whatever, that you guys have seen these posts, right? What would it be? And I think it had to be 3 words, because the ones I just heard from you were you are enough.
Yep, absolutely. And I had to hear that message very clearly in a very authentic way that I never, ever would have guessed, and I wouldn't have paid attention to it. I hadn't been up to that point for all those years until I heard it the way that I did.
So I'm going to move back to you, Neelam. So when you're thinking about helping other women understand, and we're talking to anyone right now, women and men, I get that. But this book is by women and typically for women. So I'm going to say that a little bit unapologetically for the moment. So as a woman speaking to other women, what would you say, why is this important? Tell us your version.
This is important based on my experience. I noticed there was a time around 15 years ago. So I'm not very sure whether it was before my son was born or not, or it was in between there. As Susan was saying, I checked off all the things on the list. There was a nagging feeling, and I didn't know what that was, but years later, there was a point I realized that when you keep shutting that voice within you, which is guiding you, what is happening is you start living a life within yourself, which shows that you're not really happy despite everything around you going well. And what happens is the brain does not know the difference between what's real and what's an imagination. It started taking a toll on health. And I've known over the years working with women that you may be leading the best lifestyle, doing yoga, which I was, practicing daily, walking, eating well. I had healed from Lyme at that point. But there was something I was trying to compromise all along the way, whether it was home or at work. I just didn't want to be in a situation where I was confrontational or I was ruffling feathers, and that was taking a toll. So it's really important, if you have a nudge and you have this guidance from within, and you know that you're shutting it down, it's affecting your health eventually, because it's affecting your moods, your emotions, and then chemically your body is getting affected. So there's a constant stress at the base level. So it's really important that we trust our voice. And that's why my chapter is called Trust the Voice Within. And I agree with Susan. Once you find that confident, it was interesting, after I wrote the chapter, I turned the chapter in, next day, I heard this thing saying, bar to confidence. And I felt all along we women are waiting for somebody to give us accolades, or you did such a good job on this and that, until you get to a point in your life when you can listen and follow that intuition. And it just, you don't need anything else, because now you're talking from a confidence which will not be ruffled, or which will not shake, because somebody's not going to pull it away from you for, today you're a good girl, here you go. I don't like you today, so I pull back that. So I feel like it's really important that we trust it and just take the initiative, or take help from somebody who will guide you how to get there.
Yes. Oh my goodness. The way that it affects health, I think, is one of the most important things for people to realize. I got a lot of head nods going on here today about that, right? Like this does affect your health, and physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So Heidi, talk to me a little bit about that. Either continue that thought or your own version. Like, why is this important? Why was it important to you?
What was most instrumental, honestly, was I posted a post on Facebook that Diana Leader read, And it was, my daughter just texted me, she's going to be 30, and asked me to send her good vibes to break the glass ceiling. And I thought, what the hell? It's 2020. My mom's generation was my mother was breaking the glass ceiling. She did. And, I did. And I couldn't get over the fact that that was still a thing. And so what happened in that moment when Diana reached out to me and said, hey, this is what's happening with this book, was all of the inauthenticity, the non-listening years just flooded up, because she grew up in that house where I was doing those things. And she learned that good girl behavior. She learned to silence her voice. And that was me teaching her. And so it triggered me to realize, I've got to get this out. It's got to come out of me. I have to say it. And ultimately, and other women will relate to this, I was prescribed anti-anxiety medications, dozens of them. And I ultimately lost my voice to pills and Chardonnay. And I lost it for years. And I checked myself into rehab, and I got my life back through my voice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I could go on and on about the children factor here and what we're modeling and oh my gosh, yes, the importance of that. I might have to come back to that in just a minute. Erika, talk to us about why this is important.
Following on what Heidi said, for me, there's that component of shutting down that is somewhat, I guess, feels like an injustice, right? Where things aren't fair, or maybe you're behaving in a certain way that society would like, or your profession would like, or something like that. And so my chapter, I really took into consideration the effects of that is not only health, but heart, right? So like we forget or don't do as well speaking words of acknowledgement, or speaking words of kindness, or allowing our heart to flow into our kids or our work or our family. So I feel like, below the shutdown, it's like, what are we really reaching for? And for me, it's that feeling of connection with people, caring deeply for my family, expressing joy. And so for me, there's a little bit of how to speak that language, not only the one that stands up for myself and is strong and can be a leader and be a manager and all of those things, and even up against confrontation. Like, none of us necessarily like to speak into confrontation, but that's very different than actually speaking your heart. And so for me, that's where I took my chapter, was that's really where I want to have access to my voice, because for me, that's where I think I shut that down, right? Like I could have a really good practice life and a good home life, but I wasn't necessarily saying I love you, or I care about you, or how can I support you? So I had to learn that language, as well as kind of the one that's a little bit more standing up for myself. So I found that was below that first level.
Yes, I'm so resonating with that as well, that we have certain things that when we think about speaking them out loud and really using our voice, and especially all of the good stuff, all of the good positive stuff, and why is this so difficult? And even just being able to say, I love you when you really mean it. I'm thinking of a fear of rejection and all of the fears, right? And I know that there's something there that keeps me from saying it. It's got to be a fear of some sort, but it's, ultimately when we let it happen, there's a freedom. And it gets a little bit easier, right? We hope that it gets a little bit easier. Who else wants to say something about that? I know, oh my God, these topics are so juicy. Susan.
One thing, I worded it this way in my chapter, and this has resonated with me for a while. I was so hung up on working toward future approvals that I didn't enjoy what was going on now. And it did take a health issue for me, which took me to a full stop to say, you know what, all that I can think about is what's happening right now. And had I not gotten that full stop in that moment, I think I would have chased those future approvals even for an even longer period of time. And what I've come to appreciate as I've rediscovered my own voice, which I don't think was fully lost, it was just like my light was under a bushel for a while, was that future approvals are really are nice, right? And they check off the list, but I missed out on so much of the now. And I'm not willing to compromise on that anymore. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me on finding voice is that being present in the now and allowing that to be a driver rather than those future approvals.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So on this round where we're talking about the importance of it, do any of you have another 2 cents to add on anything you heard so far? And then I'm going to take this in one other direction, but please add your 2 cents about that. I love this particular topic of why it's important. Yeah, Neelam.
I do agree with Susan. So what happened was along the way, as I felt I was finding and listening to my voice and how it was affecting health, but really helped was being like facing life in the present moment. If it meant like it was going to be uncomfortable, that's what it was going to be. If it meant, and making that choice, whether was I going to just be silent, not because consciously silence, because that was what was needed, not because I was shutting myself down, or was I going to voice it from a place of centeredness? And what really helped in my case was I had to show up every day for a year before I could decide whether I was going to teach yoga any longer or not. And that was a practice ground for me, where I was learning to speak my heart, something that I always believed in for years. Since I was a child, I was curious about, everything beyond life, but I was shutting that part down as well. So yes, the presence part is, it's hands down, we cannot afford to ignore it any longer where we are in our times on this planet. So we have to learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable in the present moment too. And
Get comfortable with the discomfort. Find your discomfort zone and know that all the good things happen right there. You're also making me want to add that stuffing or shoving that voice down has a posture that is typically shriveled. It has a physical posture. And so a lot of the times this is how I learned the awareness of it, because I was literally shriveled around my solar plexus. And that place in me, in my body, was tightening, and I could feel the bracing there. And of course, it's not easy to breathe there, is it? Right? Versus expansive, shoulders back and chest open. And so I learned through understanding what my body was doing and then giving myself a little gut check there. Like, oh my gosh, what do you need to say, girl? Like, is there something on your mind? And, what is it? And so I started through journaling, a lot of journaling, because the actual voice was too scary, especially when it had to do with people and saying what was on my heart and my mind. And that was a door for me to get there in a way that felt really good. So I want to ask you all now, Heidi, I'm going to start with you on this one. So, we're talking about this bigger scheme of healing here and finding your voice and the importance of it. So if one of our viewers is watching right now and they're listening and they really want a way in that maybe isn't so scary, what would you offer them? What would be your advice for somebody who's having a tough time?
Well, the title of my chapter is called Listen to the Whispers. And we all have this tiny little soft voice. And if we get really still and quiet, we can actually bring it up and hear what it has to say. And you were talking earlier about the stuffing down. And we grew up not being told that we had intuition, that we had an inner voice, that we had something that knew better in here than up here, because up here is learned, it's behavioral learning, and down here is authentic self. So what I would offer, and what I do offer to women, especially those who are terrified, to explore that, you know, to even open the door to the little voice, is a repeated morning ritual of asking yourself, and you have to use all the reallys. What do I really, really, really need to say? And it's a jumping off point. And if you ask that intently and you listen very carefully, something will bubble up.
I love that. I love that as a writing prompt, actually. I love the triple really. That's
Got it all.
I love that, Heidi. Thank you. Erika, I'm going to go to you next. And I'm thinking about you and Neelam both right now with yoga, because I know for me that when I was in the right class, I didn't have to say anything, and it wasn't really like we were speaking during the poses, and the tears would flow and emotional release would happen in a particular pose. But for me, it was a moment that the instructor said just the right thing at just the right time. And again, I'm going to get back to that. It gave me permission to be my full-on self right in the moment, even if that full-on self was like a little bit of a mess, right? So talk to me about, you know, maybe something you would share in your world with someone who's struggling a little bit with that voice.
In relationship to yoga, or just
you can hit it from yoga, or any angle is cool. I was just thinking about you with yoga.
Well, I think in the general, a lot of it is the environment. You know, in a yoga class, it's an environment where you're invited to actually listen, where other places you're not necessarily listening to the internal voices. And I think it's also you're potentially listening to mind, body, and spirit. And they all take some practice. If we're used to only listening to the chatter of the to-do list or the mom list or the professional list, then, you know, we're not maybe tuned into, oh, what does my stomach feel like? And how does my heart beat? And some of those other sensations. So, and I know in my practice with my patients, you know, often you'll say, how do you feel? You know, which means how does your body feel? But we don't often ask the question. Well, I try to ask the question, but we're not used to physicians potentially asking us, how do you feel? Right. And if you say, I feel sad, then, well, where do you hold that tension in your body? Or, you know, what is that feeling stopping you from experiencing? And
Uh-oh. Is she frozen for you guys too?
Yeah.
Okay. Erika, you froze up a little bit. I think I heard your dog talking in the background. I think he was helping you freeze your screen. I'm going to get back to you in just a minute to have you continue your thought on that. It happens, you guys, you know, land of the internet. Susan, let me slide over to you about that same question until we unfreeze Erika.
For me, a reset always happens out in nature. And the best advice I can give someone, whether they are women and men, whether they live in the city or they live in the country, is to go outside, to step outside of their physical four walls or their yurt or their tent or whatever their indoor space might be, and take a deep breath, count in four, count out six. Do that a couple of times, and then just stop and listen. Because there are so many amazing sounds in nature. And when we stop to listen, then we also smell and we also see, and so much comes back to us. And nature is always its authentic self. It's not always pretty. Let's face it. This is not the prettiest time of year in some parts of the country. In other parts of the world, it's absolutely stunning, but it's always its authentic self. And we can go back when we step outside. When I step outside, I see life, and it reminds me that I represent life to myself as well. Mm. And it can happen whether you're in the city and you just are looking at a tree down the block, or looking up at the night sky in the midst of all the light pollution, or you live in the country where there's total darkness. It always works.
I love your word reset. And I love the idea also, and I was thinking it earlier, great expression of voice requires intense listening. There's the yin yang of this, and so I'm with you. Nature does it for me too. It's like in the beginning, I think using my voice partially was so scary because I was always worried that what I was going to say would be the wrong thing. And nowadays, I just need to take a few of those deep breaths in the middle of my walk in the woods, and the connection will tell me the exact right thing I need to be saying, if there's anything to be saying at all, or that channel moves a poem through, or that channel moves that written voice through, right?
Exactly right. And it's often what I need to be saying to myself, right? So I'm constantly giving myself permission to say what I need to say. And that it doesn't mean that I don't think I have value or what I'm saying doesn't have value. It's just old habits die hard. And I always want to remind myself, give myself permission. And for me, being out in nature changes my scenery enough, changes my setting, forces me to think about something that's much greater than me. And in doing that, I give myself permission to be me.
Nice. Erika, I'm so glad you're back. I'm going to move back to you to finish up your thought now. I was hearing your doggy talk to us too while we were there for a minute. Do you remember where you were when you dropped off? You're talking about the body.
I think I was striking a yoga pose, but I don't exactly recall other than I was saying that I think we need to claim what we want and we need permission. And that can be in a lot of different places, whether it is nature or a studio or your physician's office. So to me, that's an important, if we ask good questions maybe, or we have good prompts, we can help people land on those things.
Oh man, I think the expression of your own needs might just be at the top of the list of things to work on in terms of your own voice. Just being able to express to the people that matter the most around you, who you're asking. Yeah, that's what you're making me think of. Neelam, what would you say to someone who might be struggling with this a little bit? What's your entry point for them?
So I agree with Susan. One, nature is the easy way out if you have nature close by, to go to the woods, especially when you're just stuck. Just go, get out, even if it's winter. Bundle up. That fresh air and those woods are just waiting for you, just as much as we are waiting to go there. As far as personally, the other thing that I use is meditation, or just closing eyes, sitting still, just being with whatever it is and just breathing through it. But I realized one thing when I truly showed up as somebody who's present in my classes and the audience and their experience changed. So when we show up we don't have to be a yoga teacher. We could be just a regular human being with no yoga experience whatsoever. But when you're fully present and listening, like just with your physical self, your no judgments, you just listen to the person as if you're listening to him or her for the first time, and you're just there. So your presence allows the other person, it gives the other person permission to speak up and to be seen and to trust you, and your presence allows them to I would say it empowers them to share. And so that's been my experience over the years. It was hard when I started teaching because I didn't have a voice. I still wanted to speak and teach. And I was told, like, just sample somebody's class and start teaching. I tried a couple of times, and then I learned to just be me. And it took over, like, it's come to this far. But the best thing I can say is just, start being with whatever is you're feeling and or you're experiencing, and show up for another person with full presence.
So what I wanted to do now is just have each of you comment just a little bit about being in this project. And if you've read some of the other stories, this book isn't out yet, you guys. We're going to be out February 2nd, 2021. You might be listening to this before that date or after that date, who knows, right? If it's after, you're linked up, you guys. But if it's before, I wanted everyone to have an idea of the power of this book. And so, Neelam, I'm going to stick with you for just a moment. Could you just make a comment about that? And yeah, what do you have to say about the project as a whole?
I think it was when I heard about it, I didn't understand the magnitude of the project, but I have a feeling each of us, no matter what we spoke about or wrote about, spoke from our hearts, and it was not an easy project. But as once we hit send, I think it was very well worth it, and we are hoping that this motivates and inspires and empowers whoever picks up these books and reads these chapters. That our only goal, at least my goal, and most of the chapters that I've read, was to share authentically, so that there is hope, and we can do a lot once we, trust ourselves, or with the support of other people around us, hopefully.
Oh man, you guys will be inspired. You will feel empowered at the very least, right? Everything Neelam is saying is a definite yes. And I will agree with you that, there was some part of me that knew the magnitude, but it wasn't really until I started to read these stories that I thought, oh yeah, that's what I was feeling even before I even read it. Yeah, so we're going to get you guys really excited about reading this book. I know we are. Susan, talk a little bit about the project as a whole and what that's meant to you, and anything you want to offer the viewers about this book.
The first thing is read it. If you have a chance, read it. And then give yourself permission to share your own story. This is an example of how some people, many who you will see yourself in or you'll see friends in, have chosen to share their story and find their voice. Your voice is waiting for you. Discover it, rediscover it, share it. Give yourself permission to do it. It is all of the things that everyone is saying, and well worth the time.
Yes, no doubt. Ditto to all of that. Thank you. Erika, what do you think about it?
This project sparked a lot of dialogue between my girlfriends and myself, and we did some writing around it. We did some questioning about it, and I guess that would be my hope for this project, that it creates questions and dialogue amongst other women. And sometimes I think we don't necessarily know where we're stuck, and then you see, oh, there's an option, or look how someone did this, or wow, I never thought of how is my teacher voice different than my wife voice, or all those things. So just being able to see that you can have power in many voices, and you can be many voices, and that we're integrated in that way. But maybe where do we lose power in our voice, and how can we speak up and speak into what really matters to us? So I hope it creates dialogue with people.
I love that so much. It just screams book club with intimate groups where they can really get into some speaking about it, some discussion, some, group journaling about it, some sharing. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. That's something I hadn't thought about, but that was happening in my world as well. As I was reading the chapters and sharing with a couple of friends about stories, it was exactly doing that for me too. Heidi, what about you?
So the whole process, and this was my first writing, first ever writing for publication. And so as daunting as that seemed at the time, the words just fell out and onto the keyboard, and there they were, and it was not hard. And so I think the takeaway for me when I've discussed this with other friends and women is, if you're not ready to actually use your voice, just write it down. This book, every woman, I've read all the chapters more than once, and every woman has so many kernels of wisdom, and every woman's journey is so different yet connected in some way. There's some common thread, that it is an opportunity for every woman to figure out whether she's going to vocalize it or just put it down on paper and sit with it until she's ready to vocalize it, that just by so doing, she will empower herself. And another important point is we can use our voices to advocate for those who aren't ready to, and we can help them through that process. And I'm a big proponent of advocating for those children and people in marginalized segments of our population. And it's all kind of come out this year. I think this is a big year of the voice, and people are raising their voices. And so the timing of this project, the ushering in of the feminine divine and giving words, voices, giving thought to such a big global topic is so needed right now. And so many women will really relish the opportunity to read these words.
Yes, thank you so much. Heidi, where can people come into your world, find out more about you right now?
HeidiBlairCoaching.com.
Awesome. And Erika, how about you? Where's the best place for people to come find out about you?
www.thebendatwhitefish.com.
And you guys know I'm hooking you all up with the websites down there. So don't worry, just scroll on down and you'll have those linked up. Susan, where's the best place people can find you?
People can find me at www.susan-cross.com or www.zenvironmentlife.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Neelam, how about you?
Oh, I can be found at www.momentinspired.com or facebook.com/momentinspired.
Awesome. And all of these ladies are, you'll find them on social, you'll find them in all of the different places. They're waiting and ready to have a conversation with you guys. Ladies, you're amazing. Seriously, the amount of wisdom and expertise and authenticity and just massive badassery that you guys put out every day, that you put into this book and you continue to put out into the world. I'm so honored to be here with you guys. Thank you for what you do in the world and for being here to share it with us. So you guys, the amazing book that we have been talking about will be released on February 2nd, 2021, coming up, right? And you can join us on my Facebook page at Brave Badass Healers at 10 o'clock Eastern on the 2nd for a little live stream launch party. I'm going to have all of the authors there with me, and we're going to have some fun stuff going on. And so if you want to be hooked up with that Facebook page, that's down below too. If you're listening after February 2nd, you're going to find all the info about the book on Amazon down there as well. And I'm going to just finish up with one of my favorite questions ever. I love the big questions, and man, oh man, does this particular topic lend itself to big, juicy questions. But here it is for you guys. What if there's something you haven't learned yet about finding or healing your voice that could change everything? It's going to be in this book, you guys. So be brave. See you next time. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Laura.
Love what you heard today. Don't forget to drop down and hit that subscribe button, you guys, and then join me over at bravehealer.com for just a little bit more healing badassery. Have a great one.